What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today, I'll be taking a look at the entries for the 2025 North Carolina Education Lottery 250 at Rockingham Speedway. So anyways, let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. We're going to start by talking about the 00 car for the Haas factory team. This one once again be driven by Sheldon Creed. Last week at Bristol, Sheldon Creed got caught up in a very vicious crash with Brendan Poole near the end of stage number 1. So over this year, Sheldon Creed has had an up and down season. He's had some good runs this year, but he's also had not the best runs in 2025. Now, this is going to be the first time that Sheldon Creed has ever ran at Rockingham Speedway in his NASCAR career. He's looking for a really strong comeback run this weekend at Rockingham and looks to pick up his first career Xfinity Series victory this weekend. Up next, how about the one car for Junior Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Carson Kvapil. Carson Kvapil's had a really strong season in 2025. He's currently sitting sixth in the regular season standings, and Carson Kvapil's had a lot of strong runs in the early portion of the year. I think he's got an outside chance of going to victory lane this week, and especially with his experience at tracks like this where tire wear may matter a little bit. I look for Carson to be really strong this weekend at Rockingham. Up next, up with the 2 car for Richard Childress Racing. This one once again be driven by Jesse Love. Jess Love's had a really solid start to the 2025 season. Of course, he won at Daytona earlier this year. Jesse Love has never ran at this track before, but he did make his NASCAR Cup Series debut this past weekend at Bristol, where he finished 7 laps down in 37th position. I think Jesse Love will have an okay run this week, and I do think he'll be a factor, maybe get a top 10 or maybe in the top 5. I think we'll have a good chance and opportunity for a good run this weekend at Rockingham. Up next, how about the 4 car for Alpha Prime Racing? This will once again be driven by Parker Reslev. Since his DQ at Circuit of the Americas, he's been doing a really good job and has had a lot of top 20 finishes, including this past weekend at Bristol. Parker Reslev's an underrated driver going into the weekend, and I think Parker Reslev could have a very solid run with the Alpha Prime team this weekend at Rockingham. We'll see what he can do in the Alpha Prime Racing machine. Up next, how about the 5 car for Our Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Chris Wright. Chris Wright has struggled in 2025. Yes, he does have a top 10 in Martinsville, one of the most chaotic races in NASCAR Xfinity Series history, but Chris Wright has also not had the pace and speed generally in the 2025 season. I do expect him to struggle quite a bit and not be a major factor this weekend at Rockingham. Up next, how about the 07 car for SS Greenlight Racing? This will once again be driven by Patrick Emmerling. Patrick Emmerling's kind of struggled in the Xfinity Series in 2025, but the 07 team generally runs outside the top 25 to top 30 on a week-by-week basis. I think he's a talented driver, though. I could see him maybe getting a top 25 this weekend at Rockingham Speedway with this team and organization. Up next, how about the 7 car for Junior Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Justin Allgaier. Justin Allgaier is having a dream season. He's already picked up 2 wins in 2025, of course at Las Vegas and Homestead Miami Speedway, and he's had 5 or 6 straight top 5 finishes and almost won last week at Bristol. I think Allgaier is going to be a favorite going to weekend. He's one of the favorites to pick up the win. I could see Justin Allgaier having a really strong chance and opportunity to get win number 3 of 2025 this weekend at Rockingham. Up next, how about the 8 car for Junior Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Sammy Smith. Sammy Smith continues to be a lot better after what happened to Martinsville and not behaving there. Sammy Smith also is going to be running the Truck Series race for Spire Motorsports this weekend, which I think will have a good chance and opportunity to get that win there with the team. I look for Sammy Smith to be a factor this weekend, maybe have a top 10, especially if I'm having some experience from the NASCAR Truck Series race on Friday night. I look for Sammy Smith to be quick and pretty strong this weekend at Rockingham Speedway. Up next, how about the 10 car for Kaulig Racing? This will once again be driven by Daniel Dye. Daniel Dye has been pretty impressive at times throughout the 2025 season. He's shown top 10 and top 15 speed on a week-by-week basis, and I think he's been consistently the best Kaulig Racing driver throughout the early portion of the year. I don't think Dye is going to be a factor for the win, but I think Dye could get a top 10 this weekend. I look for the team to have some really good speed and pace, and I look for Dye to have a really strong car with the Kaulig team and maybe get a top 10 at the track. Up next, how about the 11 car for Kaulig Racing? This will once again be driven by Josh Williams. For the second year in a row, Josh Williams is really struggling. It's been a bad start to the season for Josh Williams on a consistent basis, and he's only had a couple top 20s early in the year. And I don't think Josh Williams is going to be a factor this weekend. I think it's going to be a struggle for him. He's been one of the weaker drivers in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this season, so I think he's going to be running in the back to mid-pack most of the night. I think it's going to be a little struggle. I think he finishes most likely in the back of the pack, or middle of the pack, on Saturday at Rockingham Speedway with the team. Up next, up with the 14 car for SS Greenlight Racing. This will once again be driven by Garrett Smithley. Garrett Smithley has had not the best start in 2025 and has generally been running outside of the top 30 area in the early portion of the year. And honestly, I don't think things are going to improve for Garrett. I think he's not going to have the best run this weekend. They're probably going to give him in-car camera for some reason, but he's probably not going to be fast, and I think he will unfortunately not have the pace and speed to be a major contender this weekend at Rockingham Speedway. Up next up, the 16 car for Kaulig Racing. This will once again be driven by Christian Eckes. After a really bad start to the 2025 year, Christian Eckes has been really turning the corner. He's been having a lot more consistently really good runs with the team, and I think he's got a chance for a top 10 considering he does have some experience from the test and was actually pretty solid in the test earlier this year. I do look for him to have a solid chance and opportunity, especially since Black's Tire, I believe, is going to be sponsoring this weekend as well at the track. We'll see what he can do with the team. I look for him to be pretty solid at Rockingham. Up next up, the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This will once again be driven by William Sawalich. William Sawalich has struggled as a rookie in 2025. He's only got a couple top 10s, and he's had 5 or 6 straight finishes of 30th or worse. He's just been bad all around this year. He's been one of the worst rookies we have seen in Xfinity Series competition, and I don't think things are going to change. I think he's going to run in the middle to back of the pack all weekend. I think he's going to struggle quite a bit and probably get caught up in some sort of incident wreck and not have the speed at the racetrack. Up next up, the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This will once again be driven by Justin Bonsignore. Justin Bonsignore finished 17th at Bristol Motor Speedway this past week, and generally he's been a little bit disappointing in this car. I do think he'll have a little bit better run, considering he now has a little bit of experience, and getting multiple runs in a row definitely helps a driver, considering he doesn't have the best experience at stock cars like this. I do think he'll contend for a solid run, and I think he'll show some decent speed at the track this weekend at Rockingham Speedway. Up next, up with the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This will once again be driven by Brandon Jones. Brandon Jones continues to have a really strong run in 2025. In the last 6 or 7 races, his average finish has been like a 6th or 7th place and got that win at Darlington a couple weeks ago. I think Brandon Jones will be a factor to win. I think he's going to have a good chance and opportunity. He's been showing a lot of really good pace and speed early in the year, and I do look at Brandon Jones to be a big factor to go to victory lane this weekend at Rockingham. Up next up, the 21 car for Richard Childress Racing. This will once again be driven by Austin Hill. Despite the fact that Austin Hill struggled this past weekend at Bristol, he actually has been really solid in the Xfinity Series this year. He's already got, of course, 2 victories, that coming in the crazy race in Martinsville and then in Atlanta. I think Hill could get that 3rd win this year. I do think he's got a chance and opportunity. He was solid in the test earlier this year, especially with another driver we're going to talk about a second being in the field. I think it could lead to him being good at the track when we get to Rockingham. Up next up, the 25 car for AM Racing. This will once again be driven by Harrison Burton. Harrison Burton struggled at Bristol Motor Speedway with multiple tire issues, which is a shame because I think Harrison Burton has been doing a very good job in that car this year. Much better than Hailie Deegan had done in that car in 2024. I do think he's going to have a better run this time around at Rockingham. I don't think he's going to have any of the tire issues and troubles we've seen him have in the past. I look for him to maybe contend for a top 15 and maybe even a top 10 at the track this weekend. Up next up with the 26 car for Sam Hunt Racing. This will once again be driven by Dean Thompson. Dean Thompson at times has been impressing me throughout the early portion of the year. I do think Thompson will contend for a top 15. He showed decent speed and was a little bit struggling in the test, but I do think Dean Thompson, with how solid he's been in the early portion of this season, I think he could have a good run. We'll see what he can do this weekend at Rockingham with the Sam Hunt Racing team in org. Up next, how about the 27 car for Jordan Anderson Racing? This will once again be driven by Jeb Burton. Jeb Burton has had some good speed early in the year and has generally had top 10 to top 15 speed throughout the early portion of the season. I think Jeb Burton could have a chance and opportunity for top 15 once again. I think he's got a good chance to also make the playoffs this year in the Xfinity Series in 2025. We'll see if he can do that and have a good run at the track at Rockingham. Up next up, the 28 car for RSS Racing. This will once again be driven by Kyle Sieg. There's been times where Kyle Sieg's been really good, and there's times where Kyle Sieg has struggled. I look for him to be in the latter portion, unfortunately. I think his teammate is going to be a lot better, but I think it's going to be a struggle for Kyle. I think more than less, I think he's not going to have the best speed. I think he runs in the bottom half of the field more than likely this weekend at Rockingham. Up next, how about the 31 car for Jordan Anderson Racing? This will once again be driven by Blaine Perkins. Blaine Perkins had a couple good runs in the early portion of the year, but it's really been an up and down start to this season. I look for him to kind of run around that 20th to 25th range all weekend at the track, and I don't think he's going to be a factor to go to victory lane. I don't expect him to be a major contender to get it done. See if he can prove me wrong, but I'm not expecting much from him at the track this weekend. Up next, how about the 32 car for Jordan Anderson Racing? This will be driven by Catherine Legge, who will make her first Xfinity start of 2025. After struggling in the Cup Series race at Phoenix with Live Fast Motorsports, which it was confirmed today she'll be driving the 78 car in Mexico City as well, she's going to run a lot of races with this team. This is a solid team to go for, and I think running in Xfinity is going to be a lot better for her. I think she'll do a much better job, and we'll have better preparation this time around. We'll see what she can do and see if Catherine Legge could have a chance and opportunity to do good this weekend when we get to Rockingham. Up next, how about the 33 car for Richard Childress Racing? This will be driven by Kasey Kahne. Kasey Kahne is making his first start in the NASCAR competition since 2018 when he drove for Leavine Family Racing. Kasey Kahne is one of the favorites going into this race despite the fact he's not raced in 7 years. He's been really good at this track, was really strong at the test. We could all see Kyle Busch behind the wheel of this car at some point later in the season, but I think Kasey Kahne is going to have a really strong chance and opportunity, and I think will be a major factor in serious contender to go to victory lane. I look for the speed to be there and him to have a great shot to go to victory lane this weekend at Rockingham. Up next, how about the 35 car for Joey Gase Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Greg Van Alst. Greg Van Alst has generally struggled this season. There's not been a lot of speed for him in 2025, and he's been one of the slowest cars on the track on a week-by-week basis. I think Greg Van Alst is going to struggle, unfortunately. I don't know if he's running the ARCA race or not currently at the moment, but if he's not, this is the only experience he's going to get, and I think that's going to lead to him not having the best speed when we get to the track at Rockingham. Up next, up at a 39 car for RSS Racing. This will once again be driven by Ryan Sieg. Ryan Sieg, I think, has been actually having a pretty good year in the Xfinity Series. He's in the playoffs currently at the moment, and he was really fast in one of the fastest cars in the test earlier this year in January. I think Sieg is actually going to be a factor to win. I think that experience running at this track previously in the Truck Series is going to come into play. I think it will lead to Ryan Sieg having one of his best runs of the year this weekend at Rockingham. Up next, how about the 41 car for the Haas factory team? This will once again be driven by Sam Mayer. Sam Mayer has been extremely consistent to the point where he's second in the standings currently at the moment, but is still almost 80 or 90 points outside of the points lead in almost 2 full races behind Justin Allgaier in the standings. He's looking for that first win in 2025. It could happen this weekend with the speed he's shown at times. We'll see what Sam Mayer can do in the 41 car at this track. Up next, up with the 42 car for Young's Motorsports. This will once again be driven by Anthony Alfredo. Anthony Alfredo, I believe, finished in the top 15 this past weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway, and he's been getting the best out of the equipment so far in 2025. Though it's not been an extremely fantastic year for Alfredo, I think he's going to have a solid run. I look for him to show some good speed at the track when we do get to Rockingham. Up next, how about the 44 car for Alpha Prime Racing? This will once again be driven by Brennan Poole. Brennan Poole, unfortunately, was involved in that same crash that Sheldon Creed was involved in at Bristol Motor Speedway. I think Brennan Poole can honestly have a good run. He's had some really outstanding performances in the early portion of the year, and he can always get the best out of equipment. He's not going for dash or cash this weekend, but I do think Brennan Poole could have a good run this weekend when we do go out to Rockingham. Up next, how about the 45 car for Alpha Prime Racing? This will be driven by Vicente Salas, who will make his Xfinity Series debut this weekend at Rockingham Speedway. Vicente has made starts in the NASCAR Euro Series and also has won races on NASCAR Coke on the iRacing leagues. I think Vicente is a very talented driver. He's shown some stuff in the past. I think there's a good chance and opportunity for him to show some good stuff out of the track. We'll see what he can do and show the potential out on the racetrack this weekend at Rockingham. Up next, up with the 48 car for Big Machine Racing. This will once again be driven by Nick Sanchez. Nick Sanchez has generally been doing a pretty decent job in this car. He's either contending for top 5s or top 10s, or kind of running in that top 20 range. He's been one of the more consistent drivers all season at times, and I do think Nick Sanchez will actually have a good run in this car. I look for him to be a factor to be up front for maybe a top 10, as it's a top 10 car most weeks. I look for him to do that probably at the track this weekend when we do get to Rockingham. Up next, how about the 51 car for Jeremy Clements Racing? This one once again be driven by Jeremy Clements. Jeremy Clements has had an up and down run in 2025, and I do not believe he is going to be a factor at all. I think it's going to be a little struggle. I think he's had some good qualifying runs at times, but it's been generally, like I said, an up and down start to the season. We'll see what he can do with the Jeremy Clements Racing team when we get to the track at Rockingham. Up next, how about the 53 car for Joey Gase Motorsports? There's been no confirmation on who the driver is going to be at this time, but I do think it could be Mason Maggio or could be someone else like David Starr who's trying to work on a job with the team. I'm not exactly sure who it's going to be at this point. It's probably going to be a Ford, but I think it likely will be David Starr or Mason Maggio. We'll find out here in the coming days on who exactly it is going to be. Up next, how about the 54 car for Joe Gibbs Racing? This one once again be driven by Taylor Gray. Despite the fact that Taylor Gray only has 3 or 4 top 10 finishes, he's been very impressive in this car at times and should honestly have a win early in the year. I think Gray will contend for a top 10. He's got a great crew chief that's really going to help him in a pretty big way, and I look for him because of that experience. I think Ratcliffe will help him have a good chance and opportunity to be up front. I think he contends for a top 10 and shows some really good stuff at the track this weekend at Rockingham. Up next, up with the 70 car for the Koch Racing family team. This will once again be driven by Thomas Annunziata. Thomas Annunziata announced earlier this week that he's going to be running the Truck Series race at Lion Rock Park later this year, but Thomas also has a lot of experience from the Trans Am Series. I'm not sure if the Trans Am experience is really going to help him at the track, but I do look for Thomas to maybe get a top 25. They haven't had the overall pace and speed. It could be consistent on that front, but I think it could be a good run at the track when we do get to Rockingham. Up next, up to the 71 car for DGM Racing. This will once again be driven by Ryan Ellis. Ryan Ellis has shown some decent stuff early in the year, but has not been consistently up front on a week-by-week basis. I look for Ryan Ellis to maybe get a top 25, but that's probably about it, or maybe a top 20. I don't think he's going to have the overall speed to contend for a win or anything like that this weekend, but I look for him to show some decent stuff. We'll see what it can do at Rockingham in the number 71 machine at the track. Up next, up at the 74 car for Mike Harmon Racing. This one once again be driven by Dawson Cram. Dawson Cram's qualified very well with this team at times, but has generally had some really difficult times making these races, and they've had 3 or 4 straight races where they have failed to qualify. I think it's going to be tough because of how tough the caliber of the competition is at times in this series, so I'm not really expecting much from Dawson. I think he'll qualify not that great at the track this weekend at Rockingham and might miss the show. Up next, up at the 87 car for Jordan Anderson Racing. This will be driven by Austin Green. Will make his first start in the number 87 car, about the 4th or 5th race he's entered this year. Austin Green unfortunately missed Darlington a couple weeks ago, and he's not been the most impressive out on the track, though I will say this third Jordan Anderson Racing machine has generally not been the quickest all year long. I think he's got a better opportunity in this car with them not being the 32. It's been more of a back marker, more like a Mike Harmon Racing car early in the year. I think Green could show some stuff. We'll see what he can do this weekend at Rockingham. Up next, up at the 88 car for Junior Motorsports. This will once again be driven by Connor Zilisch. Connor Zilisch has continued to be really strong and impressive early in the season. He's had a lot of top 5 and top 10 speed, and obviously got that win at COTA a little bit, though, in controversial fashion. I think Connor is going to be a factor for the win on Saturday. I think he's going to have a great chance to get it done. I think he's going to have a really strong and fast car. I think Zilisch will have a car that's capable of going to victory lane, and I think he might be able to get his first oval win in Xfinity and might get his 3rd career NASCAR Xfinity Series victory when we do get to the track at Rockingham. Up next, up with the 91 car for DGM Racing. This will once again be driven by Josh Bilicki. Josh Bilicki's got some new sponsorship for this weekend, which is really, really exciting. But I think Bilicki is someone that you might want to watch out for a top 20. He's not a guy that's going to go out there and get you wins, but he's someone who can get the best out of equipment at times. I think he will contend for a decent performance. We'll see what he can do, and we'll see if he can get a really strong run with the DGM Racing team when we do get to Rockingham Speedway. And finally, let's talk about the 99 car for the team Viking Motorsports. This will once again be driven by Matt DiBenedetto. I'll be honest, I expected DiBenedetto to be a little bit better in 2025, but it's also his first full season for the team from start to finish. They've had some good runs this year, but they've not been absolutely exceptional. But I think Matt DiBenedetto, especially with his experience racing here in ARCA East, and I think he ran truck races here too, I'm pretty sure, I think that could be a pretty big factor. We'll see what he can do in the number 99 machine and see if he can be a factor at the racetrack this weekend at Rockingham. So, that is going to be for the interest video for the 2025 North Carolina Education Lottery 250. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go to more of that and below for that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What thoughts about the interest? Let me know it in the comments below. Later today on the channel, we're going to see truck race picks for the upcoming race at Rockingham. Then tomorrow, you're going to see a news video more than likely, and we're also going to probably have the Truck Series, the Xfinity race picks for Darlington as well. Not Darlington, Rockingham. Then on Thursday, we're going to probably be doing schedule predictions for 2026. And then on Friday, we should have a NASCAR news video dropping. And then Saturday, we're going to have reactions for Friday and Saturday for the trucks and Xfinity races. And then we're going to have 2026 NASCAR silly season predictions dropping on Sunday. And then, of course, we should be having some other content dropping, including a silly season update dropping either end of this month or dropping at the beginning of May. We got content coming out of people like Haley Deegan, Shane Van Gisbergen, Cards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bubba Walsh, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Ross Chastain, Cleese Farland, Matt DiBenedetto, Eric Almirola, Chandler Smith, with some news around him recently. We might talk about that, but I'm probably not going to until more information comes out, and some other stuff that's been announced recently. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.